What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast, where we talk about all things pertaining to life on and off the fireground. The views and the opinions expressed are those of your host and our guest. Today, we're sitting down with Eric McCormack. He's a former law enforcement officer and bad-to-the-bone trainer. We talk about his time working his way through law enforcement, some of the trauma, some of the difficulties that he experienced, and how he moved through that. We also talk about physical fitness and how that has been the cornerstone of his health and wellness, both mental and physical, and how he is working to share that message with those around him and in the world. So it is very informative, fantastic podcast. Please enjoy. Eric, I'm so happy to sit down and chat with you, and I want to talk about Outlaw Strength. I want to talk about the work that you're doing with Mountain Ops and the stuff that you're doing in the health space for LEOs and firefighters and allied folks. But before we do that, or as we do that, I want to talk about kind of who you are and how you got into this space, and your history with law enforcement and some of the lessons learned there and all that kind of stuff.
Well, we really want to dive into something deep, right?
I want to know it all, man. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Eric.
Let's start. I am 49 years old. Let's see. I was born in Roseburg, Oregon. At an early age, I got into martial arts. So I got into karate with my dad. That was sort of where I got the spark to training, I guess. Let's see. My mom and dad got divorced when I was very young, so I had some separation issues. I lived with my mom. We moved around a lot. I got exposed to some professional training my freshman year in high school. Our basketball coach played in the NBA. So I got exposed to some professional training at a very young age, and I just loved it. I just loved that.
How was it different for you at that age? Because I feel like I wouldn't know it if I saw it at that age.
Oh, it was because this was, I'm 49 years old. So you're thinking back in 89, 90.
That's complicated math, right?
Yeah, bear with me the math. Like 88. So 88, so I just love exercise. I love, I got into karate, Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, all those, Bruce Lee was just an amazing
Did you have a subscription to like Black Belt magazine like we all did?
Oh, yeah. And I got turned on to Muscle and Fitness magazine.
Okay.
That's where I really started diving into some fitness and health. But the things with the magazines, they always contradict themselves. So it's just like 1 month they'll say, oh, Stanford University had this research. And then they had another research from some other doctor, and they're always contradicting themselves. And I was just like, that doesn't really make sense because a couple months ago you said this, Right. So there's a lot of miscommunication that's been out there ever since I was into this field.
Yeah. Well, so what's interesting about that is I think it causes people to change their training so frequently because it's the latest. Ooh, what's new? Or I feel like, now I have an expert telling me this. I got to change everything. Yes. And you lose that consistency in your training, right? Which, we'll probably talk more about that down as we go along here. But I feel like that's a problem with that is these magazines are looking for I don't call it clickbait in today's day and age, right? But they're looking for a hook to get people excited. But those of us who are looking for guidance in how to train get kind of tossed and turned back and forth over different models of different modalities of training.
Yeah. So, that's where I started. And then there was a book that I got into. It was called, I think it was Eating for Strength Performance or something like that. It's a big diary book. And it had workouts for specific sports. It had workouts for football, workouts for basketball. But they were, pretty basic, simple. But that coach was in Santa Maria High School in California. So we moved from Oregon to a big city, got exposed to that professional training. And you're talking like medicine ball, plyometrics, weighted jump ropes. Just like what, state-of-the-art training. So I got exposed to that. And I mean, I just loved it. I just loved it. We moved from Santa Maria, then I moved back to Oregon, to Springfield, Eugene, and they had just started a strength and conditioning program there. So it continued on to that path. And I just loved sports. I loved the team aspect. I loved basketball was my passion. And then after high school, that's where I was sort of like, what am I going to do next?
Right.
What's the next thing? And I was sort of burnt out on school. I was a little burnt out. Just a little personal thing. I didn't really have the best childhood. My mom had 5 different husbands, and a couple of them were drug dealers and weren't good people. So my way of dealing with the bad home life was going out and training, going out playing basketball all day, just not being home. And when I moved back to Oregon, I was with my dad. I lived with my dad, and my dad used to grow marijuana back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And he got busted when I was in high school. So it was my junior year, and he got put in prison. So I was on my own. My mom wasn't able to take care of me, so I had to be self-sufficient as a junior in high school. So I had to live with friends and just survive.
Yeah.
So it really it was a really hard time, as going into you're 17 years old and you're like, I have nobody else to help me out. So that was a really hard time. But after school,
I have a dumb question real quick.
No, fire away.
When you look back on that time, and I'm thinking about this through my own lens here, but before I say anything, when you look back on that time, do you feel like, would you trade that experience?
No, I wouldn't trade. God sort of has a path for you, and I'm a believer, and it took me a while to become a believer. It was sort of, religion was sort of pushed onto me as a younger age. My brother is lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He just retired. He's a chaplain.
Oh, cool.
And he was very religious, and he's the one that sort of made me go to church. And I sort of was a little resistant as a young age,
Sure.
And I just sort of feel from these life experiences, this is why I'm here today. I'm supposed to share some of these life experiences and trauma and things I went through.
Yeah.
And it might help somebody. It might help somebody that's struggling or going through. And no, I wouldn't change anything in my life because it made me who I am today.
Right.
Yeah.
And
we all have struggles. We all have challenges, but it's just how do you look at it? What did I learn from it? And I just learned, I've always been a survivor my whole entire life, but it was like you had to grow up. So I had to have a job, I had to have a job. I was providing, and I was living on my own at 17 years old.
Right.
And, after high school, I graduated. After high school, I tried to go to school, but I was working graveyard. Graveyard's the hardest job on the planet, working from, 10 o'clock till 7 in the morning, then try and go to school during the day.
I don't know how you could imagine that. Yeah.
So I tried that for a while and just couldn't cut it. So
what kind of work were you doing?
I was working at a grocery store. I was stocking shelves during the night.
Copy.
I was a courtesy clerk when in high school. That's what I was doing. And then once I graduated high school, like, oh, you can make an extra $1 an hour if you want to work night. I was like, okay, $1 extra an hour, I'll do it.
Right.
So when I was doing that, I found a job at Williams Bakery, working at a bakery, which was making great money. I was making like $17 an hour. I didn't have, any degree or anything.
That's really good money back in those days.
Oh, back in those days? Yeah, 92, 93, I was making great money. Got me into my first house, got me into that. And then I was sort of looking at what do I also want to do, and that's where I got into personal training. So I started personal training at 24-Hour Fitness in Eugene in 95. So that's when I first started training. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew I loved exercise.
But you knew what you were doing. Like you knew what how you maintained your own fitness, right?
For
That was
sure.
kind of your base set, right?
For sure, but it's probably the hardest job because you're trying to get somebody to invest into a belief or a system that you have. So, I mean, especially as a 23-year-old, I mean, like, you know,
what do you know?
Exactly. But I had a lot of experience through, through training and exercise through high school, and I was a pretty good athlete. So that's where it's like I got into personal training and I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like, well, making up flyers, getting some people to train with me. And during that process, I picked up 2 clients that I really didn't know what they did. They were businessmen. They were very, they would show up on time. We would train 3 days a week. I was in my groove, pushing them. And I thought they were businessmen. I thought they were just guys that just wanted to be in better shape. And then I found out later that they were police officers. And pretty much they were lieutenant and corporal for a smaller agency in Junction City, which is outside of Eugene, population probably 7,000. And they pretty much said, hey, we think you'd be a great police officer. We have an opening. We'd love you to apply. And I had never
gone down that path.
thought of ever being a police officer. My dad went to prison.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was survival, and I mean, the worst feeling is coming home from school and seeing police tape around your house, and you're not able to go in and get your things.
Right.
You know, I mean, you're just shut off, and it was a hard time. And you know, as a kid going to parties, you'd run from the cops, and you know. You didn't want to even deal with that. But both my brothers were in the military. My oldest brother was in the Air Force. He's a lieutenant colonel, just retired. And then my other brother, Keith, he was a paramedic or a medic in the Army. He did multiple tours in Afghanistan. So, and as a kid, I grew up on a farm when I was younger. So we always used to play guns and do those things. And more military kind of things. Yeah, okay. And I was a rifle hunter. My grandma had a ranch, so we were country kids. So I shot a lot of guns. I did a lot of that. So we did a lot of laser tag back in the days. So that was sort of like something we used to experiment with. Because back when I was a kid, we didn't have all the technology now. It was just like ride your bikes or play guns or rock fight or whatever it is. So I never even thought about being a police officer, but I was making good money at the bakery and I was doing personal training. I was married at the time, and we had just had my son Michael, and we pretty much talked, but I had to take a pay cut. It was a $400 a month pay cut to become a cop, but down the road I would make more money.
Right.
So, me and my wife talked, and we're like, okay, well, let's do it. So I decided to apply for the position, and I got the job. And it was. I did that for 13 years. It was probably the most. It was a really meaningful job. It had purpose. It was probably the hardest job I ever did in my life.
Yeah. I mean, what makes you say that?
Well, you're dealing with people's worst days. And you are going into situations, and the police officer has more power than anybody in the world because you can take a life and freedom. And sometimes, especially today, one person can sort of ruin the whole aspect for everybody of control or power or whatever that is. And when I dove into law enforcement, I really dove into the aspect of training because it could be life. And I took it serious. I took it to a whole different level. It's like I shot my gun every week. I trained hard. I made sure I was ready. I did a lot of and the cool thing is where I was at a smaller agency, so you had to be very self-efficient. I didn't have a partner.
Right.
It was just me.
Right.
It's just me. So you have to be very efficient. And the cool thing is that the two guys I trained, they were my corporal and my lieutenant. And they were all about training. So I got sent to specialized training. I went to SWAT school. I went to FBI interrogation school. I went to detective school. I went to defensive tactics school. I was a defensive tactics instructor for my military or from my martial art background. Mm-hmm. I used to teach at the academy, physical fitness. So I got exposed to bicycle training. Any training I wanted to go to, I went to. And my training was at a whole different level. And I think that when I started teaching at the academy, it really gave me a different purpose for training. Mm-hmm. Because this exposure to this individual could save their life one day. And it's I don't know, it's a really hard position because as law enforcement, you're dealing with dangerous people.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with chaos. And trying to juggle the situation and trying to help people through that because you're a counselor. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really what your job is. You're taking somebody and you're counseling. Sometimes there's consequences for that. You know, sometimes they have to be put in jail in a timeout or, you know, I've seen a lot of horrible things. Trauma. You're dealing with trauma every single day. And as a kid, you know, the way I dealt with trauma was exercise. And I used to just shove it down. Shove it down, shove it down, shove it down. Move on, move on. And that's what your job as a police officer.
Right.
You go from one call to another, and it just compounds.
100%. Yeah, I like to think of it like when you're, you know, doing woodworking, you're laying down a layer of lacquer. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to put another layer down and another layer down until you get that fine. But it just that build up, right? And it's a hard encasement that gets built up on us. Mm-hmm. And so it's you have to have some tools to be able to decompress from all that stuff. Yeah. That's a real challenge.
And when I started in 98, there was no counseling. There was no therapy.
Oh, we would not talk about that stuff back in those days.
No, it was like you can't show weakness.
Right.
Don't show weakness. And we used to, like we talked about just before we got on, about sense of humor mm-hmm. and how you make a weird joke or something about a situation just to be able to deal with it. And if you care about people, which I do, I really, truly care about people, it changes you. It really changes you. I mean, just to give you an experience, I just got hired. I hadn't even went to the academy yet. So I just got hired. That I had a badge on a necklace. Mm-hmm. I had a gun. I hadn't got a bulletproof vest yet. I hadn't got a uniform or anything, but I was getting shown around. I was getting taken to the DA's office to meet the attorneys of the ones that you write the reports for, and they're the ones that prosecute. We were heading there, and then a guy collapses on the side of the road. I was like, whoa. And my corporal's pulling over. He's like, I got compressions. I was like, oh, shit. I just did CPR training like last week.
Right.
And then I'm doing CPR on a guy on the side of the road, and he dies in my arms. Mm-hmm. And that's, back in those days, they had the face shields that, you're trying to put it in their mouth, and you're trying to do mouth to mouth.
Right.
Hard. Man, if you've never experienced that, that's a hard situation, especially if someone's having a heart attack, their tongue is swelling. And he looked right in my eyes when he died. And I was messed up. That messed me up for 4 or 5 days. I was like, man, what am I getting into?
Right.
I hadn't. This is what I'm exposed to. And I've just experienced a lot of just horrible events in my life, just experiencing those 13 years. And that's where I'm hoping about today is that maybe we can talk about some of this might help, some of the first responders, some of the people that are going through this. It's okay to be human. It's okay to find tools of how to deal with what you're doing. I mean, you're dealing with life. You're dealing with tragedy. You're dealing with the hardest things that nobody can even understand what you do.
Right.
Nobody can understand what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember early in my career, going to family parties and sharing, like, what's the most interesting thing you've seen? And I'm like, oh, well, I would start telling the story, and then I look at see the look of horror on their faces,
Yes.
and I'm like, oh, you guys can't hear that story. Okay, let me change this. Let me change to a different story.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing that, oh, wow, this is, for whatever reason, I am uniquely equipped to experience this. And, over the last, 24 years, I've begun to recognize the tiny, the micro tears that have happened, the micro traumas that are just layered upon layer upon layer. And I vividly remember my first code, and I remember my first PEDS code, and I remember my first, trauma, and 901H in a fire, all these different events. I remember all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
detail. You remember detail.
Vividly.
Feelings, even feeling.
Right. And what's interesting is I'm like, wow, like I had a moment. I've shared this before, but I'll share it again. I had a moment a few years back when I was driving across the city, and I had a memory flash in my mind. Oh, at this intersection, this event took place here, and it flooded me. And then all of a sudden, and it was one of those days where I had come off shift. I was really tired, and I'm driving home, and so I was kind of vulnerable, I guess you could say, right? Emotionally unstable. And so I'm flooded with emotion. I'm flooded with the memory of this call. And then all of a sudden, the floodgates opened, and all these calls start coming in my head, all these different events and experiences and feelings. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I'm driving down the road, and tears are flowing down my face. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm broken. Like I just broke. And so I get home, and when my wife comes home, I tell her the story, and she goes, hey, you need to go to therapy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I don't.
No, I
said,
let it out.
I go, no, that was a mistake. I'm good. I shouldn't have even told you. Like I started backpedaling as quick as I could.
Yeah.
And then over the next year or so, I was like, no, dude, from childhood on, you have experienced various types of trauma. Mm-hmm. You need to go unpack that crap.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I'm like, why did it take me this long in my career to get to a point where I'm realizing this is having an impact? Because I processed it. I managed it for so long. Mm-hmm. Right? I managed it.
You coped.
Yeah, I coped. I figured it out, right? And so anyways, good news is I started going to therapy. It is a fantastic process. And, you got to find the right therapist. But once you do, it's very, very helpful. And, it has made a tremendous difference for me. And
tools to the trade,
and my wife.
your family. I mean, because you bring it home.
Yeah.
I used to bring it home, and at first I used to share with my wife of what it was happening, what was occurring, and then eventually you just shut that off. It's like I don't have to expose you to that, because I was good about talking with people, so I got all the child cases. Anything to do with children, I was good. I was the one that was interviewing and dealing with those sex offenders or whatever it was, because I can talk with them. I went to FBI interrogation school, so I learned body language. I learned how to tell a story to get them to relate with it so they could break down these walls. And, I mean, it's just like you said, it's a coping mechanism. And hopefully that this talk we're talking about is, I'm going through therapy. I'm trying to get to deal with all this stuff that's in the past. And like you said, learning tools of how to understand it and get help with it, and because you don't know it all.
Right.
I hate that person that thinks they know it all anyway.
Right.
I mean,
well, that's as soon as you think you got it all figured out, now you're screwed, because you will never have it all figured out.
Yeah.
And you have to be curious in life and try to understand, like when you hear, even, if you may not think you've experienced trauma, right? And you're like, no, I'm good. Like I'm emotionally stable, whatever. Well, get curious about that and go, if other people are experiencing, what am I experiencing? And then just ask. Yeah. And just work through it a little bit and go, okay, well, because there's no shame, there's nothing wrong with trying to make yourself more aware of yourself and a healthier human being. If we go to the gym and work out, why wouldn't you do something for your mental health?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You got to floss your brain, so to speak.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's where, physical fitness has just been my go-to forever.
Yeah. So at what point in your career did you go, whoa, I think I'm feeling some stuff here that I need to deal with?
Well, so just to give you a little background, in my 13 years as law enforcement, I dealt with some horrible things, saw a lot of death, and I've had 8 people die in my arms during those 13 years. I've seen horrible things. I've seen parents kill their children. I've seen child abuse. I've seen the worst of people. I've seen darkness. I've seen evil.
Yeah.
And that trauma was, I went through a divorce. I went through a separation. I have 2 boys. Went through that separation. I found somebody else that was sort of like my niche. And then she died. She had an accident. So she had a drowning accident.
Oh, geez.
And that was sort of like my rock. And once that broken, it broke me. And that's what was pretty much one of the things is that I was working some drugs. I was working with DEA for a little while, and because we had grant money. So when I got back after she passed away, I was broken. I took 8 weeks off. I came back. They put me on some drugs to hopefully ease me back into patrol, because patrol is a whole different beast, because you never know what you get exposed to, you know.
Yeah.
And so they
put you with the in the DEA project to just give you something stable to
just to sort of get me my feet wet again.
Okay.
And I was pretty cool because I like working drugs. Because it's making an impact. And we had our own CERT team, which is a special entry response team. So we used to kick in doors. Kicking in doors is the most adrenalizing thing you can ask to do. And so I got back into drugs, working drugs, and then just one day I was working a couple houses. And when you're working drug cases, what you do is you find somebody that's a user, and then you pinch them, which is you get them to be a confidential informant, and then you have them start buying for you, and then that gives you the information to write up a search warrant. Once you have an informant, then you can kick in doors. So I was working a couple houses, and I had pretty much you do surveillance on houses. You write down license plates, places with people coming and going. And I had this like 3 houses that were working, and I just had all these mugshots, associations with these houses. And at this point, I was always been in a personal training still as a cop. I still was doing that, and I started training Cameron Haynes. If you don't know who Cameron Haynes is, definitely find out who he is. He's the best bow hunter in the world. He was sponsored through Under Armour endurance athlete. He runs those 100-mile, 200-mile races. So me and him were training together, and we had been training for probably a year and a half, and he was going, I could see that he was just going somewhere. And I was working out. I was his coach. I was training him. So this day I was and we're getting ready to make a workout DVD. So this is where it's like, as a trainer having a DVD, you're like, oh gosh, this is it. This is going to be awesome.
I have arrived.
So I was working these houses, and I was just like, why am I really making a difference? With these people? Am I really, are they going to change? Am I going to be able to help them? Am I going to be able to do what I want to do, And I just sort of made a decision that there, I was like, I need to do something else. I can't handle any more negativity in my life. I can't handle it anymore. So I was broken. So I said, well, let's go back to my old skill of helping people, make them healthier, make them stronger, make them better. So I resigned from law enforcement. And the crazy thing is my last day as on duty, my life was in danger 3 times in one day. I don't know. It's people that give their lives for strangers and put themselves out there to help. And you really got to, in my 13 years, I only had 5 people thank me for what I did. Yeah. It's just mind blowing.
Law enforcement really is a thankless profession.
It
right?
really is.
You have to find the purpose within you. Because if you're doing any public safety, frankly, if you're doing it for the reward of somebody coming in and offering you gratitude, like, you're going to be disappointed.
Yes.
Because you're going to do all kinds of things and never get recognized for it.
Yeah.
Right. The majority of the time.
Yeah.
Now, firemen, we get a lot of love. But compared to our PD counterparts, it's, the dichotomy is overwhelming, right? The big difference, we get cookies brought to the firehouse and all kinds of goodies, etc. But I look at my brothers across the line, brothers and sisters across the line, and they do a very tough job without a lot of reward. They get a paycheck and a pension, hopefully, and all this other kind of stuff, but they take a lot of heat for the work that they do. And it's that in and of itself is its own type of trauma. That's demoralizing and soul crushing. You have to, I think all of us need to find, and this kind of speaks to kind of the bigger picture here, right? We all need to understand our greater purpose and, why is it that we choose to be where we are. And I do really appreciate that you said to yourself, hey man, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Can I do something different? And recognizing that I've seen enough, felt enough, taken enough, that I am going to recognize, I'm going to be honest with myself and make a change.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important principle, because so many times we just continue on and we flog ourselves and we're miserable, or we're miserable, or we're broken, or we're unhealthy. And we don't think, well, if I be honest with myself and make a change in my behavior or make a change in my situation.
Yeah.
Man, that's so hard to do, because what's on the other side of that, right? We don't know. And the fear of the unknown, that's tough.
And that's how Outlaw Strength originated.
Yeah.
Outlaw.
So let's talk about Outlaw Strength.
So Outlaw is going against the grain. Who's going to walk away from a career? I was making $85,000, $90,000 a year, full pension, good benefits. So
yeah, that's that golden parachute, right?
Right. And I was tier 1 PERS. I mean, you're going to be set.
Yeah.
But I was halfway through my career, and it was really changing how I looked at life. And then, having your personal life affected, and not be able to have that to go home to have that stability. Yeah. I was broken. I mean, I was absolutely, it was the most devastated point of my life. I was the darkest hole of my life. And I really needed to get therapy then. Yeah. But it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the resources. They didn't have it was like, oh, take some time off, come back to work.
Right.
And
hey, one of the things that's changed now,
I know,
is there's so much therapy and different resources that are targeted toward public safety. Back in the day, you go talk to some random family therapist or whatever, and you start talking about the stuff that you're seeing. They're like, yeah, I do not understand the culture. I do not understand, because this drive, like, I can't not do this. And they're like, well, you need to do something different. Like, no, I can't. Right. And so they didn't understand the public safety mindset. The people that come into this business have a culture that we are a part of, and you need somebody who understands that.
Yes. Because
there's so much in our culture that is a part of our drama, and it's part of what we are trying to deal with and manage. So, and I'm happy to know that there's so much more available for folks now that is specific to what we do.
And that's how I got turned on to actual therapy. When I moved out here, I moved out here in May with my family, and to try to seek a better home for my daughter. I have a 3-year-old daughter, Charlie. And Eugene, Oregon was really bad from COVID, the mask, the fear. It was the last place to open up in the nation. And the fear was done. So we moved out here. My wife wasn't happy, wasn't really where we were at. And her college best friend, the house opened up next door to him.
Oh, fun.
So we just decided to make a change. And I told my wife, I didn't want to move until my kids were done with high school. So once they were done, we were thinking about it. So we just moved out here, and I got out here.
Welcome to the desert, by the way.
Thank you. I love it out here. It's a whole different mecca for I mean, we're going to 5 million people.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's growing
and
like
I
crazy.
really want to help. I'm ready to grow. I'm really ready to grow and help. I've been doing this a long time, and I've really found a concept that really works to give people balance. But what I wanted to say is when I got out here, there was a thing called Bulletproof, which is an app that Phoenix just started this year and was on the news. And it's just for active firefighter and police. And my wife said, hey, you should maybe check this out because she knows I've been pretty messed up for a while.
Is that through the 100 Club?
I don't know, but it was on the news,
Okay.
and it's
Cool.
called Bulletproof,
Okay.
and it's through active for law enforcement and firefighters here. I guess you get a code, you get a number for your agency, and it's a way to get counseling through your phone that you don't actually have to go somewhere. They can get treatment because that's where it's just like going into a clinic and talking with somebody. It's sort of extreme, but they started this project. I think it's only going on this year. And I got enough courage to call. I was like, hey, I'm not active, but I just moved to the area, and they were very helpful. And they're like, we're just dealing with active right now, but we don't have anything for retired or people that maybe have dealt with it. But then they referred me to Mental Health of America. And then it took me a little while to get enough courage to go in there, but I went in there, and now I'm getting treatment.
That's great, man.
If you're in the local area, I mean, check them out. I mean, I just really think that this is an opportunity to be more humanized, to be as like, it's okay to say that you're hurting, to be real with yourself. And that's why I think this whole reason, God puts us here, and we need to be more humanized. We need to be more compassionate and love. And the world is pretty dark right now.
Yeah.
And I think that as Christians and as believers, we need to be the light. And I love my fellow first responders, military, and I want to help you. I mean, I want to help you. My drive is physical fitness. I can make your body strong. I can help you with nutrition. I can help you with training. But the mental health, I'm diving into it myself.
Yeah.
And it's helping me.
Good.
It's really helping me.
Well, man, we are all a work in progress, and every one of us on this planet has to, in my opinion, should be thinking about how they can support one another. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We're all in this together, regardless of your belief systems, regardless of your political, religious, or other belief systems, whatever that is. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal, man. And we're all hurtling through space on a giant rock, and that's a very isolating feeling. So all we have is each other.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, there might be some other folks out there that we've yet to have contact with, or maybe we have had contact. I don't know.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I do know that we have each other. That I know for certain. And so we have to lean into that and recognize that we can support one another. So let's talk about Outlaw Strength. Like, what are some of the principles that are most important to you in your training program?
Balance.
Say more about that.
So I've came up with, it's called 5 Components to Fitness. And 5 Components of Fitness is trying to really find a balance in your life. And with health and fitness, there's a lot of different perspectives. And with these 5 components, if you put a little attention to all these, you're going to be more well-rounded. I work on being a hybrid athlete. A hybrid athlete is somebody that has strength, endurance, and because this is an ultra marathon. I mean, life is.
Yeah.
And training for your age, training for injuries, training to perform. And as military, police, firefighter, you are paid to perform. That's your job. So as when I was a cop, that was my job. I had to be strong. I had to be physically fit. I had to be good with my tools. So, but the whole thing is just making somebody more aware of what they're doing. There's so much fog out there in the fitness industry. There's so much fog, and there's so much contradicting themselves. And I have been doing this whole entire life, and I've really found a balance of these components. If you actually pay attention to these components and put a little attention to them, you will be better. And that's the whole thing, is improvement. And there's levels of improvement. And I've worked with some of the toughest athletes on the planet. So mental toughness and endurance-based training is the key. And that's the whole thing. So the 5 components. First is your team. Who do you have on your team? Number 1. Team could be any coaches. I've had a lot of coaches in my life, instructors, coaches, and they all contribute in some kind of way, right? So strength coach, nutritionist, doctors, anybody that you can pull into your team to make you better.
Okay.
That's your team. That's the most important. You should be always looking to add to your team. And that's why I'm moving to Phoenix. I want to find the A team. I want to find the people that have special gifts, that obsessions. Because the only way you get good at things is obsessing about things. And I've obsessed about training my whole entire life. That's my thing. But I always want to find who's a good nutritionist, who's a good massage therapist, who's a good acupuncturist. I want to find those talented people and bring them a part of my team. Same thing as the firefighters. When you guys go to a team, you have jobs. When I did search warrants, I was the first man through the door. We had a key man. He would knock the door open and I'm in. My job is to flow through that building and not to stop. And so you have jobs. So the thing is having that team, building that team up. So whatever team that you need to keep you accountable. So professionals, your family, your training partners, whoever that is, to be a part of your team. But then you should actually look at your team and bring somebody out that you can help. Some loved one, somebody you care about. Maybe somebody is struggling. Bring them a part of your team. Influence them with your team. That's what's the most important. This whole thing is, I've done 39 bodybuilding shows in my life. And bodybuilding is an extreme, individual extreme. And this is where I learned a lot about nutrition and changing the body composition from nutrition to training. That's where I've learned. But it's just by myself. I love going through team environments. There's something about being a part of something, So team is number 1. So find your team, add to your team, find those professionals, find those special people to make you better. And you're not good at everything. So if you have some lacking areas, bring them in, make them show you the way of what they need to do. Yeah. You know what I mean? So team is number 1.
Okay.
The second is your fuel. What do you put into the machine? Our bodies, I like to say they're cars. So my car is a 1973 Camaro. It costs $3,500. But that car, you need to take care of that car. You can't trade that car in. Sorry.
This is it.
This is the only car you got. They don't have the Teslas back in those days, right? There's no Teslas. All those computer systems. So you have your vessel. And so a perfect analogy is, NASCAR. NASCAR is the most extreme race cars, right? When they pull those cars in to the pit, what do they have happening? It's a crew, a team. Yeah. Somebody's checking the tires. Somebody's checking the windshield. Somebody's doing fuel. It's a team working on that car. When's the last time you look at your fuel to your car? Taking care of the motor, taking care of the suspension, taking care of it. And that's where your fuel. I believe in first learning how to eat for health. Once you learn how to eat for health, then you learn how to eat for performance. Different kind of beast. And I believe in balanced nutrition. I don't believe in extremes and direction because there's consequences. Atkins, paleo, these extreme diets, there's consequences. if you went to any nutritionist, they're going to say that 50% of your calorie intake should be carbohydrates, 20% protein, 30% fats. That's just general population. So they're saying fuel is the most important thing for brain function, body function, organ function. Carbohydrates are the most important thing.
Right.
Why did we get away from that? Why did we get away from giving our bodies the things that needs to run efficiently? So with your fuel, I don't guess anymore. So I use a fitness tracker to monitor my output to my input. You got to know how much energy your body's putting out.
Do you use like a macros type of model for yourself?
So the idea is that your heart, it's all geared around your heart. Your heart is the motor. The heart is what generates heat, energy. Everything is geared to your heart. Let me ask you, do you know what your heart is doing? Do you know what your heart is doing during resting? Do you know what your heart's doing during exercise? That's the most important muscle in your body. So with the fitness trackers, this is 2022. I could clone your dog if I wanted to. Really? $50,000, we can make Fluffy come back again.
That's not that stupid dog, and he's not be cloned.
So I don't guess anymore. I used to guess when I was younger, just go off of feeling.
What type of fitness tracker do you use?
I use the Fitbit.
Okay.
I like the Fitbit because it's designed for fitness and it's the most inexpensive. And that's what its purpose is. The Garmin is a good one too.
Those are
it has
spendy,
but it's a little more expensive. Yeah. And my whole thing is trying to make it as simple as possible. Right. It's too complicated.
Is there an app that goes with Fitbit that you can do diet with as well?
Oh yeah. So I use MyFitnessPal.
Oh, okay. Copy.
So it's an Under Armour app. So I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna guide you along this way of maybe this might help.
Okay.
So you got to know what your output is.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where it's just like, if you don't know what your output is, so you're driving your car without any gauges.
Mm-hmm.
So you're driving your car without having a speedometer, no oil gauge, no gas gauge, no nothing. So with the technology, and it's not exact, but it's going to put you in the infield playing baseball. Right now, most people are in the stadium. They're maybe having a hot dog or whatever. I want to get you playing ball. I want you getting to understand your body. And it's not exact. But you have to remember with the fitness trackers. So when you go into the hospital and you put that little thing on your finger, it tells you your oxygen level.
Pulse ox.
Oh,
I know what this is.
Yeah. So it's the same technology called green light technology.
Okay.
It's the same technology as in the hospital. So what it's doing is picking up your skin. When it elevates through the heart rate, it picks it up. Mm-hmm. And it's going to miss some. It's not going to catch them all. It's going to miss a few. So it's always going to work in your benefit because you'll be burning more than what it says. So it's going to give you a ballpark. So I know exactly what my resting heart rate is. I know exactly what my heart is doing during exercise, or what kind of it is, how much my output is. What my sleep, we're talking about sleep. It monitors what your REM sleep, your sleep is, what your heart's doing during resting, recovery, and what your active minutes. There's different zones. There's fat burning zone, there's cardiovascular zone, and there's peak zone, how hard your heart's working. So if you're training for a particular purpose, you should know what your zones are. If you're trying to increase your cardiovascular zone, you should know that if you're in cardiovascular zone while you're training. You know what I mean? It's really like Formula One, NASCAR. You have a pit crew, and that's where the technology's there. Why wouldn't you want to use it to monitor your exercise, your fitness?
Well, you want an answer for that?
Yeah.
I'll tell you. The reason people don't use it is because they don't know where they should be, right? So they're like, I don't know what this data tells me nothing because I don't know what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yes.
Right? Back in the day when I was doing ultra marathons and Ironmans and all that stuff, I kept volumes of logs. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, I was really, really good at keeping logs, but I wasn't good at going back and really processing my data.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hard part is, what am I looking for? What anomalies in here, heart rate variability, and the different types of stuff I'm trying to measure.
Yes.
Right? It can be data overload. Mm-hmm. So how do you simplify it for the majority of us? Right? So, the firefighter comes to work, officer comes to work, they're wearing their Fitbit, they're doing their business every day. How do we?
Okay, so let's make it as simple as possible. The most important thing is I want to increase the longevity of life.
I love that plan.
That's it.
Yeah.
I want to improve the longevity of life. I want to improve quality of life. So let's just start with the heart. So an athlete has a resting heart rate of 60 beats per minute, right? That's pretty good, somewhere in the middle. That's still 33 million beats in a year. Holy cow, that's a lot of beats, right? And you have to remember, your heart only has so many contractions in it before it shuts off.
This is why I stopped running ultra marathons.
We might need to do one more. So my whole thing is trying to bring it to light. To understand is like, man, your heart is most important. We got to regulate what your heart is doing. And that's the problem with keto, Atkins, paleo, all these extreme diets. They're taking away carbohydrates. And when you do that, you'll see that your heart has to work harder because it doesn't have the fuel. And that's the thing is that there's a lot of heart disease. And when you go to higher fats, higher protein, and no carbohydrates, you're trying to make your body run off of fuel that's not supposed to run off of. So if you're making your heart elevated, you're going the wrong direction. I want to give your heart the right fuel. And it comes down to intestinal fat. Most people are overweight. Our society is obese. Over 30% body fat. So starting points. Man, I can talk about this stuff forever. So starting points. There's 3 different starting points. First is your internal health. Most important. I just got blood work done. So I get blood work done every 6 months. I go in because I want to know what my body's doing. And I get the full panel. I want to see what my cholesterol is doing. I want to know what my thyroid is doing. And you can get these panels done. And if there's any deficiencies, why don't you talk about it? Mm-hmm. Let's consult with the doctor. Find these professionals. So your internal health is the most important. You might look physically healthy, but what's going on with the machine inside? So internal health is number 1. Getting a blood panel, talking with your doctor, finding out what's going on. Find a balance in those. If there's something off, fix it. If you can't fix it through training and nutrition, supplement it in. Have somebody help you. So internal health. Then you got your physical fitness. There's lots of different tests for physical fitness. My whole concept is endurance-based training. So I have my own test I do. It's like, how many push-ups can you do in 2 minutes? How many jump squats can you do in 2 minutes? How many body weight pulls can you do in 2 minutes? How long can you hold a plank? And how far can you move in a half hour? Those are just using body mechanics. I mean, that's a simple test that you can do anywhere. So finding a test that you can monitor your physical fitness. Murph. I mean, whatever it is, whatever your goals are for what you want to do. If you want to get stronger, you got to have a test. Mm-hmm.
You got to be measuring something. Right?
Yes. I mean, people are just going through it, and that's where tests don't lie. Blood work doesn't lie.
Right. Well, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? About the randomness of training for a lot of folks. Mm-hmm. It's sort of just like, well, what feels good today? I walk in the gym and I'm like, I see the rower. Oh, I'm going to row something. Yes. Or I see the dumbbells. I'm going to do some curls today.
Yes.
Right? And it becomes random. And then we're disappointed. I'm like, well, my fitness isn't changing.
Yes.
Because you're not doing anything with any measurable purpose.
Yes. So we got to have some tests to monitor your physical fitness. And that's why when you start off the academy, you have a test. We used to have the OraPad, which was, that's where I went to the academy. I used to be an instructor. So you have to do a balance beam. You have to jump over something. You have to do a dummy drag pull. And it's all for time. I mean, it's related to the job. You probably have to do
we do
stairs.
A thing called
you
a
do
CPAT,
stairs.
Physical ability test. But it's job activities that are,
Mm-hmm. So you have to do those. So it's the same thing as a test. And that's how you can even get the job, is to do the test. Right? And as law enforcement, once you get into that, you're through your probation, that test sort of goes away.
Yeah.
And that's why they have some incentives for law enforcement. We used to have an incentive that you'd make an extra $100 a month if you could run a mile and a half in 14 minutes, that was it. You do one test a year, and I was like, man, I'll definitely do that for $1,200 for a year. But there's lots of incentives, and that's where it's just like you need to have some tests to monitor your physical fitness.
Yeah.
And then the last is your body composition. How much muscle tissue and how much body fat you have. And the way I look as the hybrid athlete, you need to not be carrying extra weight. You have to remember is intestinal fat, the fats around your organs. Your heart has to work harder to pump that blood through those organs because it's restricting blood flow. And the whole idea is if we can eliminate some of that body fat, your heart's not going to have to work as hard. So the flow will be easier. I mean, you see it. I mean, when you're going out to these calls, you're seeing people with diabetes, heart disease, overweight, and they're the ones that are having the problems. So I use a DEXA scan. A DEXA scan is a bone density scan machine. It comes down to technology. People are like, oh, you know what? I can use that little scale I bought at Costco for $100. Okay. So the way the test is done, like through this, is like through an electric current. Or if you're dehydrated, if you have inflammation, it's not a very accurate test. Look at the technology. A DEXA scan is $70,000 machine.
Where do you get access to one of those?
So the cool thing is in Phoenix, if you're in Phoenix, go see David at Tempe DEXAFit. He'll educate you, but it's super accurate. It's the gold standard of testing. When I lived in Portland or lived in Oregon,
you can schedule an appointment, go in, get scanned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thing is that you got to know. You got to know where you're at, how much muscle tissue and how much body fat you have. And then you can actually make a scientific approach to losing some of the body fat and building muscle. So you sort of got to know. So the DEXA scan is the most accurate because it's an X-ray machine. It scans your body. It will tell you exactly how much you have in your right arm, left arm, intestinal fat, legs, torso. It will break it down into exactly. Another gold standard is hydrostatic, which is getting submerged in water, but it's just going to give you a general number. And so it's going to say this how much muscle you have and this how much body fat you have. But the hydrostatic is hard because you have to drown yourself. That's a hard test. And it takes a few times to get used to it. That's why I used to do up in Portland because it was only $40.
Right.
And I knew I went to a clinic and that's what they specialized in. And but the DEXA scan, you just lay there. And it scans your body and will tell you what your body fat percentage is and will tell you how much muscle and body fat you have. And then you can sort of make a scientific approach. For a hybrid athlete, I believe that you should be around 10% body fat. So you have some fat cells that you can pull from, but you're not carrying extra weight. I mean, being performance. It's all performance and based. You need to have flexibility. You need to have balance. You need to have strength. You need to have endurance. I mean, you need to have all of it. So those are your three starting points: your internal health, your physical fitness, and body composition. And starting there, and then sort of making that approach to your health.
Okay. So circling back, you talked about team was number one, fuel was number two.
Mm-hmm. So with fuel, it's knowing what your output is. So with the fitness tracker, it's going to tell me. So I typically burn 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day. I train about 3 to 4 hours every day. It just depends. Probably an hour and a half of weight training. I train 6 days a week. And then I do some endurance-based training, do a mountain, whatever that is. I like that endurance. So my output's a lot. So then I know how many calories my body's burning, and then I use MyFitnessPal. It's an app, a free app through Under Armour, and you can log your foods. So my minimum is 3,500 calories I eat a day, minimum to 4,000 calories I consume a day, somewhere in that ballpark. And it just depends on what your goals are. If you're trying to lose body fat, which most people do, I'm going to give you a little secret here, okay? So if you Google 1 pound of body fat, just Google it. It will tell you need to burn 3,500 calories to lose 1 pound of body fat. How do we get away from that? You know, I mean, people, they're missing it. I mean, I just heard some commercial on the way. Oh, you can lose 1 pound of body fat a day. I was like, whoa, no way. That's not possible. So using the science. So it comes down to it. If you're trying to lose body fat, for men, we burn more calories than women because we're heavier. We have more muscle tissue. And it comes down to the heavier you are, the harder your body has to work to move. So that's where like the biggest loser, those guys were 600 pounds, 500 pounds, moving a 500-pound body or pumping, that heart has to pump through that. It has to use so much energy just to function.
Yeah. When you think about just the principle of the cardiovascular system, right? You've got to oxygenate all that tissue.
Yes.
The fat cells as well. So your oxygen, how much more demand does that put on the system to push all that blood flow around the system and to oxygenate it all?
And even more muscle tissue. So more muscle tissue is living tissue. So your body has to work hard to pump that blood through that tissue.
Right.
So it comes into a finding the balance, how much muscle you have, how much body fat you have. And that's where the fitness trackers will really give you that guidance. So just to give you a little tip out there, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to lose body fat, not just weight, because remember, 70% of your body is liquid. So I could drop 10 pounds in a day if I wanted to, but that's not body fat.
Right.
So the losing body fat has to be a methodical plan over a period of time. So for men, I recommend 1.5 pounds a week. So you're looking at about 5,000 calorie deficit for a week. Women, maybe 4,000, because you don't have as much output. And the thing is that if there's too big a deficit, your performance suffers. If you start breaking over 1,000 calorie deficit, you'll see your performance will start suffering. You'll see your heart elevating. If you really want to know, about a 600 calorie deficit, your performance is perfect. You don't feel hungry. Your body can perform. Then every week you're losing 1 pound of body fat. So let me just give you one analogy. So if everybody in the world had a Fitbit, and they ate 100 calories less from their output to their input every day, just 100 calories, over a year, that's 36,000 calorie deficit, which is 10 pounds of body fat. We'd be going the other way.
Yeah.
But if you're eating 100 calories more than what your output is, that's why we're getting heavier and getting fatter.
What do you think about the quality of those calories?
Oh, it comes down to a difference. Yes, you got to use some common sense, And with I talk about carbohydrates, and people are like, oh, don't eat carbs. Carbs are what give you energy to perform, to function, to train.
Yeah, we have villainized carbohydrates, haven't we?
And the main thing is that just remember when you're picking a carbohydrate, there's a thing called a glycemic index list. It's what diabetics live by. So it tells you how fast it turns into usable energy. Ideally, if you really want to know, pick something in the middle of that list. Look up the list. Start finding things in the middle of the list to get you to the next meal. I don't believe in starvation, because when you starve, your body's going to use the most efficient energy, which is muscle tissue. And that's where fasting, all these things of starvation, it's not the key to health. Keeping the machine running, that NASCAR, you got to have the pure octane fuel in your body to function, especially as law enforcement and military and police or firefighters, you got to perform.
Yeah.
I can't have you starving and crashing. I don't know if you've ever trained with low blood sugar level. It's a terrible feeling.
Yeah.
You feel like you have the flu, you're crashing, you can't focus, you see stars. And that's where it's like, that's why I invented Gatorade. Gatorade is just sugar water.
Right.
That's all it is. It's just to try to keep you in the game. It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah. So what comes after fuel?
So fuel is your motor. Okay, so the first two components is the most important, your team and your fuel. What do you put into your body? And that's where, you should eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner as your core meals. And then supplementation is where I use to fill in the gaps. Because I'm eating around 35 to 4,000 calories a day. That's going to be very hard to eat in the solid foods. So that's where supplementation, it makes it easier. Liquid-based calories is easier for your body to absorb. It doesn't take as much effort. So when you're eating more foods, it's hard because your body has to break them down and it has to transport it. So it's effort. It's an internal resistance. When you eat food, it's an internal resistance. And we want to make that resistance as easy as possible to absorption, to function. So that's where supplementation can fill in the gaps. And I'm a true believer in supplementation. I work with a company that does it. So you got your team, you got your fuel. Those are the two most important. The next three components can be juggled for whatever you're at in your life, for your age, your gender, or whatever it is. So the next three components are your motor, which is your heart and cardiovascular training, your armor, which is the skeletal structure, the armor to your body, like the weight training, and then you got your recovery. So those three components, you got to find out. So if I'm going to be dealing with somebody that's like maybe in their 70s or 80s, I'm probably going to be working on their motor, recovery, and then armor. Maybe a younger kid, armor, their hearts are probably pretty healthy, motor, and then recovery. It just depends on what that is. So those components, if you have sort of a balance in your team, your fuel, your cardiovascular training, your weight training, and then have that good recovery system, then you're going to be sound. You know, we talked about sleep. Sleep is huge. Recovery is probably one of the most overlooked areas of fitness.
Yeah, well, we talked about that a little bit earlier, and that the ability to recover is really challenging. You know, for firefighters, you come off of a long shift where you've been up all night running calls, and you may feel like, oh, I didn't have a fire, I didn't do anything really strenuous, but just that getting up, getting on the truck, going on a call, coming back, repeat, rinse, wash, rinse, repeat.
Anxiety.
Like that's a lot. And it's on this stress to the system.
Yes.
And so then you're like, well, I'm going to go work out. Well, you're going to add more stress, right? So how do you mitigate that?
But that's where it comes back to, putting your mind in that right set. If you need to chill for a moment, most important things of recovery, definitely hydration. That's probably number one. We're like in one of the hottest places in the world. So,
yeah.
And that's where like with Mountain Ops, we have electrolytes. Those are good things of minerals, substances. Yeah. Water is the most important nutrient for your body. So I definitely recommend at least a gallon a day, minimum, 128 ounces. Start there and flood your body with the nutrients. Because remember, water is the transporter to everything. Everything in your body has water in it. So the more you can put into your body, the better that body's going to function. So start with your hydration. That's the most important. Start with your hydration, and then stretching, taking care of your body. I brought a tool for you to try. It's called Buff Enough from Percussion Fitness. It's a personal massager. All it does is circulate blood. So you can circulate blood to your shoulders, your hips, your back, especially you sit a lot. It comes down to circulation is the key. Circulating blood. I mean, it's pretty simple. Lubricating your body so it's ready to go.
Yeah. And
that's where stretching is probably the most overlooked area of fitness. Nobody stretches. They don't have time for it. It's like, man, have you ever had an injury? If you've ever had a neck strain or a back pull, well, I can guarantee it's probably from not getting ready for exercise, or you're going from sitting to something active. And that's why I used to train before I went to work every single day. So I was ready for it. I would train before I went to work. So my body's lubricated. I'm ready, mentally focused. So if I have to fight with somebody, I'm ready for it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you got to be prepared for battle. You got to be prepared for what's asked of you. And that's where it's just like, you have to take priority in your health and fitness and what you're doing, because somebody's life might depend on it. And I didn't never want to have somebody die from my performance.
Right.
I mean, that's reality.
Yeah, one of your partners or yourself for lack of.
Yeah. If I couldn't do something, and that's why I shot my gun every week. I use my tools. I want to be efficient with my tools.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think about, so I follow Cameron Haynes, and you mentioned him earlier. And what I think is fascinating, and I think about, I'm not a hunter myself, but I think about the skill of hunting. And you're up in the mountains, you're working it out, you're at altitude at times, and you're moving, and then you never know when you're going to run into that prize bull.
Yes.
And it's time for you to get your bow, draw back, and you might have to hold that draw for a while until you get the right shot. And meanwhile, you were trudging up the hill, so your heart's racing or moving. So like the level of fitness you have to be functional under pressure is really important. Mm-hmm. And for firefighters and police officers, this is critical, because you go from sometimes a standstill to 100% exertion, and now you have to make critical decisions.
Yes.
Right? You have to size up a fire structure. You have to size up a perp and make a decision about what you're going to do next.
Yes.
A life and death decision at times. And so fitness is such an important aspect because the more fit you are, the more you're able to absorb that impact and be able to think clearly under pressure.
Yes.
So that's
the key to everything.
Yeah, it's huge.
And training is the key.
Yeah.
Training and preparing for the worst situation. And that's why I would train for the worst situation.
Yeah.
And like you said, being prepared for like knowing your environment. Like we were just talking about a little bit before the show is like going to a building before it goes or it catches on fire. Knowing where the exits are, knowing where there might be water possible to get. Right. I mean, it just makes sense.
Right.
If that's your job, take care of it. Do it right.
Right. Well, and I always say that we in the public safety sphere are industrial athletes, right? Paid pro athletes.
Athletes.
And so, that comes with a burden of responsibility, right? If you let yourself go, and I mean that deliberately, like you have, there are folks who come on this job, get through probation, like you mentioned, and turn it off.
Yes.
You are doing a disservice to yourself, those around you, and the community you serve. It's irresponsible.
Yes.
Period. And I know, hey, some of us, you get injured, and then the weight gain comes because you're not able to move the way you used to be able to move, but you better figure out something. Because if you're going to climb on that truck, you're going to get in that squad car, you're going to go out and try to perform, you're only putting yourself at risk and those around you.
And the team. And that's the thing is being real with yourself and what limitations you have and sharing those limitations when you, as it goes on.
Yeah.
And that's where the older I get, I understand it. I've changed my philosophy a lot. Because when I was younger, it's like, how much can I lift? How much can I bench? How much can I squat?
Yeah.
And then the older I'm getting, it's like my priorities change.
Yes.
And that's where it's like we got to figure out how can you contribute to the team the best. Like how you said, now your job is sort of to see what's going on and maybe give them some other solutions because you've experienced a lot in your life.
Right.
So, I mean, it's all about helping the team where you can, but you got to be able to pull your own weight. You don't want to be the weakest link. And that's why I'm just trying to say out to you, if you don't know where to get started, there's a starting point for everybody. Yeah. And it's always good to go back to the basics. Yeah. Go back to the basic fundamentals.
Amen. So we've been going for a little bit. Let's pull it to a close. Where can folks find you and see the stuff that you're doing and maybe reach out, ask questions? Where can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram, Outlaw Strength on Instagram, or you can go to outlawstrength.net. I'm going to be around the area, so you can just contact me, DM me, or whatever it is. I mean, I'm hoping that we can build some relationships. I really want to help as many people as I can. I just have all this knowledge, and I've trained some super athletes and extreme people, and I don't know, I want to give back, and my whole thing is I want to serve, and that's our whole thing, is serving and giving people the tools to be successful. And there's just so much darkness out there. I just want to really just be the light and help people.
Right on, man. Well, I appreciate your desire to do that, man. That's fantastic.
Well, thank you for having me.
And yeah, thanks for coming on and talking to us and sharing your time and your knowledge. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Oh, one little shout out. I work with a company called Mountain Ops. They're based out of Salt Lake City, and it's a supplement company, and they have athletic apparel, training equipment. And if you are a first responder, paramedic, firefighter, contact them. They can give you a discount code. So contact this customer service. It's called mountainops.com. And they have some great supplements. I definitely recommend, a good solid protein powder. Electrolytes is a great one. If you're looking for pre-workouts, post-workouts, they have it all. But one of the great things about the company, they're all family-based. And anytime that you provide, you buy a supplement, they provide a meal to children that needs meals. So we've provided 3.5 million meals to children.
Oh, that's awesome.
So talking about purpose, our whole purpose is try to give back. So that's where I want to, I want to help the future. I mean, if you're a parent, if you love your kids, if you want to start taking care of yourself and then start taking care of your kids, let's start changing this whole mentality of health. Let's just not just take it for granted. Let's start really working toward that direction of improving families and loved ones that you really love and care about. Let's make them beasts. Let's make these next generations savages. And the only way to do that is work on these 5 components. Work on your team. Work on your fuel. Work on your armor, your motor, recovery. Go train with your kids. I mean, go walk with them every single day. Make them healthy. Find out what they love to do. So you need any help, I'm here to help.
Right on. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Eric, for sitting down and sharing some of your time and talents with us. If you are enjoying this podcast, get on over to Apple Podcast, rate and review the podcast. That helps us propagate and move this thing forward. Also, go to whatever platform you enjoy most. Subscribe. These podcast episodes will drop in the middle of the night when you least expect it. Now, most importantly, take the lessons you've learned here. Find a way to work them into your life. Challenge what you currently understand about what you're doing. Look at your life through a lens that is different and reevaluate, make changes, continue to adapt, continue to grow, continue to get some.